Today we have 3 words. Our first word is correlation coefficient. So you should be adding these to your vocabulary, preferably in a notebook under the letter C, so they're a little bit easier to find and not just on some random page. And a correlation coefficient is just a numerical measure of how 2 variables are related. So numerical, meaning a number of how 2 variables are related. And it can go from -1 to 1. So remember, any negative number it just means as x value increases, the y value decreases. Trying to combine them together. So again, that'd be kind of like our points would be something in there that could be on that line as well. If it's a positive value, it's going to mean as x value increases, the y value increases. And then the closer the points are to the line, it just means that it's going to be closer to 1 or -1. So the closer the points are to the line, the correlation coefficient is closer to 1 or -1. And a 0 means no relationship. So we'd want that higher correlation coefficient to be able to say that I trust these numbers, they make sense to me, or that I could say a relationship really exists. If we're talking 0.2, 0.3, you'd still probably going to tell me I'm not going to trust those numbers because that means my points are pretty far off from my line, whether that's a -0.2 or a +0.2. And then we have 2 other words to do. So you're going to flip to the letter I, and our word is interpolation. So today we're all about using our data to predict, and we really want to be able to think about how accurate that is. So our correlation coefficient gives us some idea of that accuracy to say, oh, I can really trust these predictions because my number is, our correlation coefficient is about a 0.9. And I know we're not actually calculating it because our calculators can do all that work, but we have to be able to understand how to do that. And so interpolation means that I'm predicting within a data set. So if I have my graph, I have my points, I can definitely see that there's a relationship in there. So I can draw in my line of best fit, and I might say it looks like this. And remember, now I ignore my points and I only use the line of best fit, which is why that correlation coefficient is really important. And our points definitely are kind of closer. We would guess somewhere in there that it's definitely not a 1, but it's going to maybe be like a 0.7. And again, I'm not so fixated on how do I calculate it. That number just tells me my points are pretty close to the line. There's a definite pattern. If I am using interpolation, that means that I'm going to be looking at any value in this box, because that's where my points are. So it means if I'm going to predict, if I had a number, or if I knew what this, if I was going to predict for this piece here, that's interpolation, because it is within points, it's surrounded by points, and that can give me more accuracy. I like to use the example of years and number of people who are using cable. When I was in school, that was what a big thing was, and it went up and up and up. And if we were to predict it outside of those data points, we would have been so wrong, because now the number of people using cable is dropping every year. So we can only use that data predict so far out. So interpolation means that I'm predicting within the data set. You're going to go to the letter E, and you can probably have an idea of what the meaning of the word that we're going to be using, but it's extrapolation. Which is predicting outside of a data set. And because you should be on a separate sheet, I'm just going to draw another quick graph. It really doesn't matter where we choose to put our points. So that means extrapolation is going to happen if I'm using in this area before something happens. For example, email just came when I started college, and that when I started college in 1994 is when I graduated from high school, and by the time I got to college, that's when more people started to have email addresses. So if we started predicting before that time, there really wouldn't be any, or there'd be very few, because it's just like a company using it. And then again, we can use some extrapolation later on. At that time, it was outrageous to even think that people might have more than one email address, and now it's kind of, people have a work email address, a home email address, or just like their junk email address, and those kinds of things too. So that would affect our data over here. But what we don't know is what's going to happen in the future. Is something new going to come around? And that can limit how far out we can extrapolate what's really going to happen. Just like I was talking about before with the cable companies, nobody realized that we would have all these different options for TV, and they couldn't see beyond what cable was, and that makes a huge difference. So those 3 words should be in your vocabularies, again, preferably under each letter in your notebook.